here in Northwest Indiana, some news that I didn't think got nearly enough burn. A judge has accepted the deal for Cleveland Cliffs, formerly known as ArcelorMittal, formerly known as Inland Steel, to pay a $3 million fine and donate land to the national park after they killed a ton of fish. A federal judge has accepted the agreement under which Cleveland Cliffs will pay a $3 million fine and donate land to the Indiana Dunes National Park after a chemical spill after its Burns Harbor Works steel mill, then owned by ArcelorMittal, caused a massive fish kill in 2019. Now, the Northern District of Indiana Judge Philip P. Simon accepted the consent decree among the Environmental Law and Policy Center and Hoosier Environmental Council. The federal and state government said that the Cleveland-based steel maker, it resolves the lawsuit filed by the two environmental groups against ArcelorMittal in USA after the 2019 discharge into the Burns waterway leading into Lake Michigan that exceeded ammonia and cyanide limits that resulted in 3,000 fish dead, beach closures, and tainted drinking water. Yum, yum. Environmental Law and Policy Center Executive Director Howard Lerner said it was a big victory for protecting Lake Michigan's clean, safe water and Northwest Indiana communities. Cleveland Cliffs spokeswoman Patricia Persico said that the company would work with federal and state governments and the environmental groups on following the consent decree requirements. The steelmaker plans to take preventative measures such as upgrading the wastewater treatment centers at Burns Harbor. Now, under its previous ownership, the mill discharged cyanide and ammonia that led to the fish kill. And it was a very major threat to the drinking water supply here in Northwest Indiana and the greater Chicagoland area. Remember when Chicago used to constantly sue us over...
over the water.
Yes, this is what this is about. So, I mean, look, we've gotten multiple warnings over the recent years. Like, I believe it was last year we talked about this here on the show, that Indiana is basically the most toxic state in America in terms of pollution. And this is a big part of the reason why. Like, we are letting these companies essentially get away with killing Lake Michigan. I mean, that's all we got, Rev. Mm-hmm. That's all we got. All we got is Lake Michigan. So, like, does this make you hesitant to want to drink the drinking water from here in the region?
Well, I've always felt like the water here was better than other places I'd been.
Yeah.
But, nowadays, it's just hard. I mean, when you think about, like, what happened up in Flint, Michigan, when you think about the fact that, many of our houses are pretty old and were built with materials that, we're now learning, lead pipes and stuff like that. And then you see articles where, these companies, something like this happens and they pay a fine and, life goes on.
Yeah.
Because, that fine is really, for them, it's like the cost of doing business.
Yeah, $3 million isn't that much for a company that's worth billions.
Yeah. And then you find yourself, well, what did they do with the money? The fine money. What happened with it? Did it go to efforts to improve water quality? I don't know. It was like they just paid again the cost of doing business money.
Right. And this comes as a study recently came out and showed that millions of us here in America are consuming an invisible toxic cocktail of cancer-linked chemicals. I just recently read this. The Environmental Working Group found that 56 new contaminants have been discovered in the tap water in the United States over the past 2 years. Yum, yum, give me some. The new contaminants we're listing in the analysis by the Environmental Working Group, which advocates for clean water, in its November 2021 update, its first update since it began recording data in 2019. Among the contaminants are a number of PFAS chemicals, toxic contaminants known as forever chemicals. Make my FAS the PFAS, as I always say, including pesticides, radioactive materials, which have been linked to health issues such as reproductive issues and cancers. Wow. I always like to play the clip of I don't think I have it right now, but the clip of Tyrone Hayes, the scientist from Stanford University, this brother who's from Stanford, who talked about how he did the research and found that the pesticides in our water were turning frogs, essentially giving frogs sex changes, and other animals sex changes. So we have that to look forward to. All of us basically having our hormones basically flipped upside down with this drinking water and a lot of the chemicals that we're ingesting in plastics and whatnot. Now, some of the contaminants have been discovered in specific areas, and the Environmental Working Group has created a map where people can input their zip code to see the contaminants linked to their tap water. So you could go to the Environmental Working Group website, and they've created a map where you can put your zip code in to see if what contaminants have popped up in your drinking water. I can only imagine what's in ours, the most toxic state in America. Now, while some contaminants can be prevented through water filters, thank God, others cannot. Leading the Environmental Working Group to advocate for greater water regulation alongside the Environmental Protection Agency, noting that at times the legal limit for regulated chemicals found in the water are often higher than the scientists recommend for protecting health. So, yeah, get on that. Go to the Environmental Working Group website. Find out what the chemicals are in our water. I'm certainly going to do that after I talk to this caller. Hello, caller.
Hello. You know, there was another spill at that same facility. I don't know if it was after Cleveland Cliffs acquired it or just what.
Yeah.
But in the last year and a half, I remember, I used to work out that way. I know the territory. And I know there was another spill in the last year and a half.
Right.
And it was really, I remember there was one that was really bad because the city of Portage was affected.
Right.
And their nice little lakefront that they have there. Yes, it was. And they were trying to figure out what the fines were going to be or what the penalties were going to be, but I never heard anything actually happen. Thank you.
Oh, it's all good. Thank you for your call. But yeah, we've had countless spills. Like I said, we've been sued multiple times by the city of Chicago. It's one time I can't blame all our problems on Chicago, like a lot of us like to do. But definitely, there's a lot of times when these mills, and it's always been hard because the mills and the factories have been our lifeblood in this region, Rev.
Right.
What would we be? I mean, Gary, Indiana, is named after Elbert H. Gary, the president of U.S. Steel. Like, the steel mill has, my father worked in the mill 45 years. I got uncles worked in the mill for 50 years. I have my grandmother worked at the mill. My mother worked at the mill. My sister worked at the mill for a while. Yeah, exactly. Like so many people in my family worked in the mill at some point. Uncles, cousins, like at all these mills, Inland Steel, U.S. Steel, Youngstown Steel, LTV Steel, But these mills, especially U.S. still gets all this does not pay the amount of taxes that they used to pay to the city of Gary, and they also don't hire people like they
Right.
used to from the city of Gary, because it used to be, like the Joe Jackson era, like everybody's daddy worked at U.S. Steel. Now, nobody's daddy works at U.S. Steel unless he lives in Chesterton or something.
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time, they still have, they're still, I mean, we're right across the street basically from them. I'm looking at the Genesis Convention Center right now, but once you pass the Genesis Convention Center, you're basically looking at U.S. Steel. They're sitting on the entire lake,
Right.
getting to pump whatever they want to in the Lake Michigan, basically, because if you're sitting on the lake, if you spit, it goes into Lake Michigan, basically. And, but once again, they're not providing the jobs that they provided. They're not providing the type of tax revenue that they used to provide, but they're still polluting the area. And then these other mills in other towns like Burns Harbor are doing this, poisoning our drinking water. They don't even pay us any taxes, really. So, I mean, like, they're not even hiring us, really, or hiring us. It's sort of hard to...
Yeah, as someone, I think it was on Counterpoint earlier this week, Natalie and Virgie were talking about that whole issue. And I called in because the thing about U.S. Steel and local taxes is that, okay, U.S. Steel argued that we're not using as much of the building stock on that property. So the actual physical real estate is not as valuable from a taxing standpoint as it once was. Okay, I get that. But at the same time, they control that land. The buildings that they're not, I think they blew up 2 towers.
Right.
Okay, now, I get it. If you're not using the buildings, you don't want them taxes if you were using them. But you're also not returning that land so it could be used by the rest of us.
Right.
It's not like they're increasing the amount of beach area that we have access to. And so, they're simultaneously limiting access to it and saying, well, we shouldn't have to pay for the control that we have over it.
Right.
So, how does that work for the rest of the city? And then at the same time, because Gary is historically, a ward of U.S. Steel, and I said in that phone call, U.S. Steel has a historic relationship to Gary that is not the same as some of these other cities, Portage and East Chicago and so forth. And so, no, they do have a responsibility to be a good corporate resident, a good neighbor to the rest of the city. And if they recognize that, look, we're making massive profits and at the same time we're contributing less to the health and well-being of the community that has supported our existence here historically for, all these years. If Gary, Indiana were to go, just completely implode, then U.S. Steel would have to deal with the consequences of Gary, Indiana ceasing to have a functional existence.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, how much of that is on our politicians, though? How much of that is on the people whose job it is to advocate on our behalf and to go to, U.S. Steel or go to the companies that take advantage of us and are sitting on our lakefront, poisoning all of us, not hiring us, and not giving us the tax revenue that we deserve? How much of that is on the people that we've elected?
Yeah, and I know that the tax revenue that we deserve. I know, like I said, they were talking about this on Counterpoint, and I know that's a difficult thing to quantify. How much do we deserve from U.S. Steel? How much do we deserve from the Buzz Box? How much do we deserve from the Dairy Queen on Broadway? Yes, the government officials have to operate within the parameters of what they've got. And yes, the government officials should be looking for ways to diversify, because otherwise, if U.S. Steel is shrinking in size because of technology, so they don't need to hire as many people. Right. They don't need as large a footprint. They don't need as much of Gary to be functioning. All they really need is access from, what is that street before Grant Street? Buchanan. Access from Buchanan Street. Access from Broadway. And, as long as those two routes are functional, they're good. And the rest of this can go back to Wilderness as far as they're concerned.
Yeah.
We can't rely on them feeling a responsibility for the city.
Right. Well, that's why you have people who are in elected office. So make it known, folks, to the people whose job it is.
But that leads me to another question. How do we create the economy, local economy that we would like to have? For the most part, I hear businesses trying to come in and residents saying, no, we don't want that one. And I find myself wondering, well, what sort of businesses do we want? And I need to hear more than just some sort of vague, non-concrete description of, well, we want everything that's not a trucking company. We want everything that doesn't involve something with chemicals. We want everything that doesn't somehow have, involve the use of trash.
Right.
Okay. Now, given that, what do we want? Do we want a city full of fast food places?
Yeah, and truck stops.
No. I mean, we already said we don't want truck stops.
Right.
So, do we want a city full of fast food places?
Right.
Do we want a city full of nonprofits? Well, you have that. Then you got people complaining about that. Right. Well, what do we want? Because other communities are getting businesses of all kinds. Mm-hmm. They're getting a wide variety of businesses. They're getting restaurants. They're getting light manufacturing. They're getting some of everything.
Right.
How do we get some of everything if no one is pulling for some of everything to come here?
That's absolutely a good question. Are you saying that this sort of ambiguous, this sort of ambiguous business that we keep looking for, that's kind of how we ended up with Acumen, isn't it?
Possibly.
That's probably how we ended up with Acumen. We're just like, okay, now are they going to dump something here? No. Are they going to be a truck stop? Nope. Okay, we're sold.
Yeah.
And it was Acumen, and ultimately they essentially ran the flim flam on us, and they gave us back the Genesis Center.
They gave us back the Genesis Center, but
we do have
it. Now it's been empty for for much longer.
Right.
It's like it's gonna get to the point where we will end up literally having little choice but to gut the place.
Yeah. You can't have it being down that long, folks. All right, folks, please give us a call. We got about 30 minutes. It's 7:29. We got about 30 minutes. Don't forget to let us know how you feel. Call us 219-885-1371. That number again is 219-885-1371. If you don't want to talk on the phone, please send me a message on Facebook. I'm looking at the Facebook right now, WLTH Radio. Make sure you go to WLTH Radio on Facebook. You can see the Rev right now, or myself on camera. Yes, you can see the Rev just waving at you. And please, you can leave a question there if you don't want to call in, but do it before 7:55, okay, or 7:50 something, because after that I am not picking up the phone. I'm telling you, I am not picking up the phone. I will just let it ring, because we gotta get out of here, or Marion Williams comes down here and wrecks shop. So please give us a call, 219-885-1371. We'll be right back after these.